Face front, true believers. Bluedragonfive here.
And Rohith Dhar.
10 years ago, Marvel's Daredevil stood above the rest and showed us the quality storytelling other shows were blind to. Now that it's official return, now it's officially returned, the burden falls to us to discern the truth by asking the question, will the new show measure up to the original? Join us as we start discerning Daredevil Born Again. Tonight's episode, Season 1, Episode 5, With Interest. So, Rohit, you're back. What do you think of Episode 5?
I think it was a solid episode of television. And I think I've seen sort of a lot of this discourse about how the way this episode is structured, it really works as just a regular good episode of TV where it doesn't necessarily push the main plot forward, but it has a good beginning, middle, and end where there's a central conflict. It's sort of in a bottleneck or like narrow area, and characters that you like are able to kind of bounce off each other in terms of personality. And that's something that is unfortunately not really common in modern television outside network TV. And so I think for me, I appreciated sort of the insular, small, intimate nature of this episode.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed this episode. I think honestly, I think this episode is it feels like kind of the best representation of the tone of what the original version of the show was going to be. With basically that the original version of Born Again was going for, in that it was, it's basically it's what you would imagine Daredevil in the MCU. It's honestly, ever since the inception, ever since the announcement of like, okay, you're bringing Daredevil into the MCU officially, before we fully got the green light to bring back all that Netflix entails, all basically the whole Netflix continuity and canonize all of it. It always seemed to me that, again, the hope of hope being that we're going to bring everything back, but even if we didn't, either way, my hope was always that the logical way to do it would be we would be leaning more into the Mark Waid run of Daredevil. And I always attested that the Netflix Daredevil was kind of a blend of eras of Daredevil, and I felt there was, and Mark Waid, to me, Mark Waid's run of Daredevil always felt like a fun blend of a little bit of Miller, a lot of Stan Lee, but there was a lot of, kind of like original Daredevil and kind of the lightheartedness and just kind of the fun. But again, it had some of its dark moments, like Miller. Mm-hmm. So Mark Waid always felt like the middle ground. The Netflix show had a little bit of that flourish to it. So I like that. I always imagined that the whole like Daredevil kind of like we just drop him into the MCU in a logical, 7 years later, and how would we, baggage or no baggage, the way to approach Daredevil feels like we would just approach it in a kind of a fresh, like we're basically taking this character and dropping him into just kind of the MCU as we know it, and we're kind of learning about him and just kind of like going from there. So it feels like kind of like a fresh way of kind of introducing him in a bottle, in a vacuum, which essentially is what we had been doing until the show, which, when his appearances in She-Hulk and Spider-Man and so on and so forth. And this feels very much in line with that, and I like that it is that, but it does. I still feel jives with something that does work for the whole of what we're doing here without being burdened by. It's so weird because this episode is in the unfortunate position of, timing wise, I'm sure a lot of people. I think I'm convinced a reason we have 2 episodes this week is the fear of like, oh god, we're teeing up everyone's expectations for he's going to put that suit back on, and then we're going to do like a kind of our fun kind of one-off episode. But that's not their fault that they want to do a fun one-off episode. It's just like, okay, we're going to do our episode, and then we're going to get back to our main plot. We're going to get back on board with things. And it also doesn't. I don't think it helps that we have an awesome, like, in terms of timing, we're so close. Like, if only we could have somehow rearranged things and had the premiere of Daredevil up a little bit, so we could have had this on St. Patrick's Day, or like near St. Patrick's Day, like the week of St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, no, I think that with how the production went, it definitely kind of screwed up with sort of the synergy that they probably had in mind.
That's the thing, because I want because I like this episode, but I just feel it's a victim of just kind of like where people have been kind of at on this season. Where again, it's like people are trying to get locked into kind of like we're trying to get back on the tone of the whole anti-vigilante kind of story, and we keep betray. That's been my criticism with this is like we have a really good start, and we don't really we don't really explore Kingpin's platform that got him elected. And it seems, well, obviously, well, without getting too into it, we do go there, but again, we've been stalling, we've been spinning our wheels for a while. And this episode is, I imagine some people who are dialed in are looking at this episode. I mean, this is great, but come on, man. So this episode, in a sense, is everything that I wanted in an MCU with Daredevil on the table, and it's Matt Murdock. It's like, here's the thing: Matt Murdock as a character has always been like the nexus and the crossover point, along with Spider-Man in Marvel Comics. Period. He is like he's in the crosshairs because people always need a lawyer in Marvel. So he's always like he's perfect for crossovers, kind of like in the way Spider-Man is. Like Spider-Man's first appearance meets the his first issue meets the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
So it's always just those two characters are just bred for just kind of intersection and meeting. Again, the MC, Marvel has always been just kind of about everyone's a neighbor in New York.
Yeah.
So those two characters have always been very been very much kind of the poster boys for that. So I think Daredevil lends himself to this very well, and just doing kind of a bottle episode of sorts. I think really reflects well on him, and it's just a solid episode. And even had we gotten the original vision and I've just been thinking after this episode where, again, look, Born Again, the original creative team, I know I don't mean they keep beating it into the ground. A lot of people have been talking about it because obviously it's kind of the sticking point of season one here where we're kind of having two conflicting visions. But even with the original vision that they seem to have had, it doesn't seem bad, but it just seems different in tone. And again, we're not getting a full picture of either or, but this just seems to be like a perfect like Daredevil and kind of the legal drama, which could also have some really fun episodes, one-offs, which this is. So I can absolutely see it working, and getting an episode like this, I'm perfectly content with, so long as we get to our main plot and really hit the notes that we need to hit with it, which seemingly we're on track of doing again.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a long roundabout of me saying I like the episode.
No, I think this episode. I think if Daredevil was a regular network show, or even had double-digit episodes, maybe not even like 20 or so episodes, maybe 10 to 15. I think people may be a little bit more forgiving. And I feel like if the new creative team had an opportunity to maybe overhaul this particular episode and maybe tie this like random robbery to like the longer like plot run about vigilantes or the machinations that's going on with not with Kingpin but with Vanessa, I think this people would have regarded this episode as like, oh, it's not advancing the overall picture, but it's still connected in some sort of way.
Well, that's the thing. They went back on this and they put in like there's a little connective tissue with the whole $1.8 million debt thing. So it does connect. But again, all of that feels very reshooty. All of that feels very, okay, we need to try and thread the needle on some of this.
Well, that's a little more tacked on. I feel like if they had more time, they would have definitely given it a little bit more urgency, and that would have been more at the forefront than necessarily something that they just tagged on at the end to make the episode meaningful, which I feel like is a really bad way of viewing television or any individual TV episode. People should be able to watch an episode and comment on whether it is a good story that has beginning, middle, end, and is able to accomplish what it can accomplish. And I think this episode accomplishes in having Matt Murdock really do well in this interesting scenario where he can be Daredevil, but he's still able to do justice and have some fun with the MCU character like Yusuf Khan.
I mean, I'm going to give you a weird comparison, okay?
Okay.
I've said this many a time when Tegan and I were doing the initial Discerning Daredevil, talking about the Netflix show, the first season specifically. The first season, what I loved about it, and the reason I will always go to bat for the first season, like I'm not alone, obviously. The show came back, so but just I've always Daredevil, the original Daredevil series, still feels like like the best live action superhero show we've ever gotten, and I will still stand behind that. And in that regard, it feels like in good company with an animated equivalent like that in the animated series. And I use that comparison because that in the animated series, what it had going for was every episode felt like a mini movie. That was what they were going for, and you felt like you got like a full kind of a Batman movie in 22 minutes. And the original Daredevil series, it had this really great, this fantastic balance. The first season had this flawless balance of, I would attest, each episode stood on its own, and that you felt like you got a really comprehensive story that was very much, again, it felt like a mini Marvel movie in an hour, like a hair under an hour. But by the same token, again, it did connect and it did flow in a binge. Things did connect and it did work really well serialized. But I did like that each episode really did individually stand on its own, or very much felt like a really great chapter in the overall 13 kind of chapter story. And an episode like this kind of takes me back to, again, it's kind of like the whole Stan Lee philosophy of every comic book's your first comic book, and this feels like a great just kind of standalone. This is Daredevil. It's just kind of a fun little entry, but it just felt like it gave you the glee of like reading that. Like, this feels like an excellent, like a Mark Waid pitch for a Daredevil comic, or like an issue you'd pick up of that. It just feels like there's just an adventure with this character that we know is far more exciting than he's letting on right now.
Yeah, honestly, this episode could have been just like a neat little. If there was like a few more minutes added to this episode, this could have been a special presentation.
Yeah, like a Marvel one shot, a special presentation, or I mean, honestly, it's kind of like that Dirty Laundry, the Punisher short. Not the one they're working on now. I mean, like the Thomas Jane fan film.
Yeah, with Ron Perlman.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I guess without further ado, again, we'll get things started. So we'll start with the plot. So give me one sec here. Anyway, so let me walk you through the plot here. So it's St. Patrick's Day. Okay, so it's St. Patrick's Day. Matt visits the bank for a loan. Luca has sent his Irish henchmen, not goons. Very very clear distinction. These guys, they believe in the cause. Luca has sent his Irish henchmen to try robbing the bank. There we go. So robbing the bank to pay his $1.8 million debt. He owes the victor. Matt ends up Matt, with the help of Yusuf Khan, navigates the hostage situation and foils the robbers. And that's the episode in a nutshell. It's really uncomplicated in the best of ways.
Yep.
There we go. Okay, so let's move on to arcs. Let's kind of break down kind of our main arcs and just kind of like the real meat of the episode here. So we're going to start as we often like to with Matt Murdock. So going from last episode to this episode, even though this one is just kind of dropped it's kind of dropped in our laps. Like, again, I do question, like, if this episode could have, in theory, been at any time, barring the whole $1.8 billion thing, which easily could have been reshot or dubbed over, given that they're all wearing masks for the majority of the episode. I forget if we have the big conversation pre-mask or not. If we do, then it could have been reshot. The point being, taking it as it is, the way it's presented to us here, just factoring in like where Matt's head would be at right now. So it feels like Matt is facing the realities of last episode we kind of spoke of the disenfranchisement Matt had with the path that he was taking, with Leroy. But again, I don't know how you feel about it. Doesn't it feel like it should have been Turk Barrett?
Well, I feel like Turk Barrett is not as sympathetic as.
Well, no, but by that logic, though, he could have been made sympathetic after all this time that we've spent with him. Don't you think we could have taken a sympathetic stab at Turk Barrett to some degree?
I feel like Turk Barrett's role is just kind of like a scummy guy that is comically tossed around by like the Marvel Street heroes. So I don't know yeah, you could make him sympathetic.
Well, no, this is what I'm saying. That guy has two scenes. Scene one is Turk Barrett to a T. It's all Turk Barrett. That first scene with Leroy, where he's like making all the blind jokes and everything. That's Turk Barrett up and down. Second scene, though, you're right. It feels like Turk Barrett, maybe not as traditional as we know him, being all scummy, but by the same token, it feels like it might have been really interesting to see Matt, kind of bringing out the best in Turk Barrett.
But the problem is that Turk has. It's not just Turk Barrett has probably a more extensive rap sheet than Leroy. and then 2, he has connections with the criminal underworld.
Mm-hmm.
We were introduced when we see him in Netflix Daredevil, like committing human trafficking.
No, you're right. I don't disagree. And that's always the thing, though. I love that with Turk Barrett, you always have two things working against him in terms of like ever redeeming the character. Okay, one is that his introduction is human trafficking, but he gets the tar beaten out of him regularly. So I would say that one somewhat balances out, somewhat. Just in terms of we don't forget because we beat him up all the time.
I think it would have been cool if if it was like a relative of Turk that maybe
awesome.
maybe like if not a son, a nephew, or whoever.
Maybe his cousin.
Well, I mean, I think you can make it a little bit more tragic, because what Leroy said about being kind of like falling through the cracks of the system. If you have it be a young guy, I think back to like the young guy from Defenders who had to work with the hand and was kind of in the life of crime because he had to feed his family or whatever. Right. I think especially in this episode, the fact that there's that line from Yusuf Khan about we try to do our best to impart on the next generation to help them in regards to what they can't see. I think it would have reverberated and echoed back to like dealing with someone who is in the wrong side of life and is so young, and you feel bad that they're not taken care of. They should have been in a better situation.
Right. So the other thing with Turk Barrett too is he did not intentionally, but he was the domino that fell that got Pops killed in Luke Cage. So Turk Barrett is always going to have that working against him.
Mm-hmm. And he's kind of more of a Weasley character. So
well, no, exactly. Look. I'm saying I wonder if at some stage they did consider we would like Turk Barrett, but then we'd have to explain Turk Barrett or have to like at the point of development on that. So I don't know, but I'm just saying, however it shook out, at least the first part of that scene does feel like Turk Barrett to a T. But I'm with you though. You're right. Second half of that scene does make it feel very incongruous for it to ever be Turk Barrett. Anyway, I guess the main reason I bring up Leroy is the takeaway from that scene is again, even on the the lawyer side of things, Matt's kind of becoming a little disenfranchised with the system, which again is maybe inching him more towards the vigilante path, or at least seeing that he's definitely got to balance the scales in a way, so he can be lawyer by day, vigilante by night that he used to be. So this is yet another example. He's kind of facing the harsh realities of doing what he's doing, especially trying to fully invest in in law, where in doing things the way he's always wanted to do them, taking all the pro bono work that he does. The reality is, that's when you have clients who don't pay or can't pay, you're taking all the hard cases. Now, mind, we have always established that, like between She-Hulk and this, and he does take on a few, like Luke Jacobson and everything. He does take on the occasional like paying client, so they can keep the lights on. We've always kind of established that, and even with Nelson Murdock, that presumably is that's just the way Matt operates. So he does. Doing that though, again, it seems like Murdock and McDuffie might be facing some financial difficulties because of this. They're looking for a loan. Mm-hmm. And again, this is yet another thing I wonder if, in part, it feels like a reality that he would face no matter what law firm, even if the presumption is that McDuffie was very successful and Murdock brought the talent, so that was keeping him afloat for the majority of things. That's why they could take on as many pro bono cases as they could. But it seems just Matt's kind of ethics system in being a lawyer, he only takes on, traditionally he takes on the not guilty and the, the ones who are like, very much kind of a moral clause in how he takes on clients. He's not taking on the rich or the guilty for the most part.
Well, I think to add on to your point, Dragon, I think part of it's also like this show takes place like about 3 to 4 years after the blip.
Mm-hmm. We saw Falcon he's having some financial difficulty. His sister's having some financial difficulties.
So I mean, consider like what's happened in our real world the past 5 years or so. So I mean, the economic after effects of it. Not to get too into the weeds about it, but I think it would be fair to say that for Matt, probably in pre-blip times, it'd probably be easier for them to maybe have a wider clientele. And for the many clients that don't pay, there's a good number that do pay. And probably post-blip, maybe it's just a matter of either there's less rich clients to come around or the rich clients kind of just congregate to a few firms, and Matt just has sort of the few slim pickings, which we don't really get a good sense of like the law firm finances about it. But man, in real life and probably in fiction, I would never want to run a law firm because oh my god, having to
Well,
having to do upkeep, maintenance, rent, payroll, health insurance.
I bring it up because again, this feels like a classic Nelson and Murdock problem, and that it does make you wonder. Okay, is this a thing where because we had the kind of in the original version we had the X Nelson Murdock, we kind of attached this to Murdock McDuffie. I mean, I think it still works because either way, again, this is a realistic problem that Matt's way of doing things might incur, plus all the other stuff that we factored in there too. The post blip, GR, what is it? Global Reparations, GRC.
Yeah, there's the GRC, but I think the thing that might kind of hurt this plot point a bit is that, in Netflix Daredevil, if Foggy and Matt were in this kind of situation, there would be some, maybe not drama, but there'd be some level of tension or back and forth about, keeping the firm afloat.
Yeah.
Like, I remember, the first season's like, hey, Matt, we got to accept some rich clients, even if they're shady, because we need to keep the lights on. We can't.
Episode 3.
Yeah.
The Healy trial.
Yeah. And so with this, it's like, I think to Tiki's point, when I was last on, it's like supporting characters. And I feel like Kristen McDuffie, it's like she just doesn't feel fully formed.
Oh, because they haven't given her enough screen time yet. I don't think they haven't done anything with her.
But like we're in episode 5 and they're in episode 6, and it's like I feel
she's just kind of there, right?
Yeah, and it's like Heather, at least for Heather, she is kind of a conduit to explore certain ideas, about vigilance.
Like Heather's kind of a linchpin between our plot lines, oddly enough. Even though, again, Heather debatably has almost less development.
I mean, she at least has some level of like chemistry with Matt, and there's something interesting in sort of her arc or whatever. It's just in more relation to others, but it's like Chris McDuffie is a specific character for the Mark Waid run that has a specific personality. That's actually a love interest in Matt at one point. And I mean, with this and the next episode, it's like overall, it just felt like the people who were making the show were just taking characters from noteworthy Daredevil runs that have a particular personality, have a particular history with the character.
I think it's problematic that the law, our other law practitioners in She-Hulk got more development than Kirsten McDuffie.
Oh man, that is, and each episode was half an hour.
That's what I'm saying. That does not reflect well on poor McDuffie.
And this was pre-overhaul it's supposed to be a legal procedural. So
yeah.
Now I kind of wonder if there's much more.
Well, remember it was supposed to be 18 episodes, like all in one shot, though.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if there was a lot of Kirsten McDuffie material that just had to be excised.
That's a really good question, Rohith. I don't know.
Because I could just, with what is presented here, it's like if you just cut out all her scenes, you might get a little confused, but I feel like you would still understand the show and be able to watch it just fine. Which I feel pretty bad about for the actress in question. Maybe in season 2 she'll have a bigger part to play or have more things fleshed out, but yeah.
All right, let's see. So anyway, point being, Matt's facing some realities. That's what brings him into our story here. I love Matt meeting Yusuf. So I love the idea of the lawyer and the banker, and the idea these are people who have professions that are designed to help people, but there are limitations to what they can do, despite them wanting to do more in the moment. So I really, of course, Yusuf was always a highlight from Miss Marvel, and every time he's kind of appeared since, in the Marvels and such. So Abu's just wonderful. We love Abu. Yes. So that's so. Yusuf here, he's he's very pleasant. I love the candy bit, which is a bit of a reference to Miss Marvel, where he has a sweet tooth.
I like when he holds out the candy, he like rustles it just to help Matt like place where the candy is.
Yeah, which that's what I'm saying. These little touches with him. I love that he's as helpful as he is. He's also a little bit oblivious to the blindness too, where he's like trying to demonstrate a Funko without like let him like feel it. It's like
But
tapping in a little.
the thing is so innocent about it that like it's endearing in a way.
Yes, as Jacob said, his Funko was cute. That's the thing. Yes, the Miss Marvel Funko was adorable. I love that he's so again he knows, but he's keeping it secret. He's so prideful of Miss Marvel and his daughter and everything. It's really sweet. Again, Abu was always here's like a lot of people. I think honestly, a lot of people were sleeping on Miss Marvel in terms of like I don't think anyone really. I don't think the viewership was really there for it. I don't think. I'm not sure, but because I think people really did love her in the Marvels, and it's because she's a really good character. And that show, again, she was really well done in that show, and her family, I think, was well explored. But then it's just the plot of that show just didn't do it any favors. That's the thing. Like I think, like midway through, is the plot just kind of dropped off. But the characterization was very strong, and we actually kind of know one of the people that was in was in that show and the Marvels, her brother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sagar Sheikh, who's on he's on the Deli Boys. I think it's the Deli. Was it Deli? The new Hulu show.
Yeah, Deli Boys with Purna Jagannathan, who I know from Never Have Ever on Netflix, and is also in HBO's Lantern. So,
Nice. So I haven't gotten the Deli Boys. I keep meaning to because our boys in it. But yeah.
No, and and I appreciate and just the interaction. I think it's like I think I kind of appreciate how Matt is able to be like very charming to how Matt, there's always the joke about how he just knows how to seduce or charm any woman.
Mm-hmm.
He just knows how to be very just kind of affable and likable to Yusuf Khan. I like the whole St. Patty's bit of it all.
The whole green like a leprechaun will pinch you.
Mm-hmm. And Matt's like, oh, I like more neutral colors.
See, I'm always I'm obsessed with the color theory of Daredevil, like the main all the thematicism of the colors from the original Netflix show. Where it's basically there's like this wonderful causal like thing between red, black, and white. Like those are like the defining colors of that show, and they show up in all sorts of like you can always recontextualize and everything. So I love this. I like the neutral colors.
Yeah,
this is the also it's the fact blind man. He's not green kind of escapes him. Kind of funny. Yeah, so again, he's very pleasant. I love like he's taking rejection like a champ. It's very it's very nice. And also I love the whole like this is really beautiful. This is I thought was the most charming line between one of the most charming lines between them where he says Jersey City. Essentially I much prefer it to Hoboken. I think it's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about Jersey City.
Yeah.
It's delightful. Of course, every time I hear Jersey City, I'm thinking Megas XLR, so that's great.
No, and I also appreciate if I think it's near the end of the episode that Yusuf Khan invites Matt to dinner with his family.
Yeah, everyone loves just inviting Matt to family dinners and kind of eating things because look at the end of She-Hulk. It's kind of a thing. Everyone loves Matt just the charming attorney. Everyone wants to invite over for dinner. Again, that's the nexus thing I'm talking about with him as a Marvel character. Like every Marvel character wants to hang out with Matt Murdock and sit him at a table. Look at No Way Home. He's sitting at the he's sitting at the table with May and Peter and it's great.
Yeah, if Matt was any longer in the movie, he would have just seduced Aunt May right there and then.
Oh, without me, Foggy would have been. Sorry, Happy would have been so jealous.
Oh yeah, and I think what's really nice about Matt and Yusuf is that without really getting it going, basically kind of doing the thing that Tiki kind of mentioned in our debate on Sunday about like basically lecturing the theme. There is sort of a theme that is present that in a kind of fun way is sort of pays off in the next episode, which obviously we're not covering for this Discerning Daredevil spoiler cast. I think the idea of parenting and just like doing right by your children and sort of the idea of family is very, it's something that's very defining in both Miss Marvel and to a certain degree Daredevil. Especially they're with Daredevil's history of his father being who he is and finding his mother later in life. I think the way that Yusuf and Matt just are able to interact, there is kind of this like I think Matt kind of just sees like the father he kind of wished he had, even though he appreciates like who his
No,
dad.
no, he loves Jack Murdock. He loves
Yeah.
his father. I mean, let's be very clear about that.
Mhm.
But I mean, he did see, like we saw in one of the great scenes of season 3. We did see the him through a conversation with the imagined Wilson Fisk. He did like see the faults in what his father was doing. He always knew the faults of what his father did. At the end of the day, I'm sure there was some embitterment about like he threw his life away to basically for a pointless lesson, that kind of stuff.
And I think especially with his relationship with Agent Ray Nadeem, seeing kind of what Ray was compromised and him trying to make atones for that.
That was my favorite. One of my favorite things in season. I love the whole parallels between Ray Nadeem and Jack Murdock towards
Yeah.
the end. I loved it so much.
If I had a nickel for every time Daredevil got to interact and have a close relationship with a South Asian father, I would have 2 nickels.
See, Jake, that's a joke for Jacob in the comments. It's finishing for kind of gag. Anyway, have 2 nickels. Anyway, okay, so on the vigilante side of things, I kind of have this. I might be reaching with this. So on the vigilante side of things at Matt's arc, so Matt, I would like to now again. This is where I'm into the whole thing. Where in terms is where we drop the episode. This is the bit I'm reaching for, but just taking it as it is. I would say Matt is looking for because again the big hump that this episode's kind of getting over in the grand scheme of the season is like, okay, we're getting very close to him. Like he's on the rooftop at the end of last episode. And he's playing the billy clubs. Fisk is kind of in a similar thing where he's kind of flirting with his destiny and kind of his path. Anyway, let's see. Anyway, so Matt's looking for an excuse. He's practicing with the clubs. He's enjoying unleashing violence in like calculated ways throughout this episode. He's and he has like he can sneakily like dispatch with these gunmen and the way he takes the guy out in the stairwell, like stuff like this. So he's inching closer and closer to kind of going full tilt back into basically putting on the suit. So I think it's kind of manifesting itself, and I think here's the reach. I think after his visit with Frank Castle, the picture is becoming clear for him because again with the whole disenfranchisement, he's kind of looking back on maybe I should put the suit back on again and go back on my promise to Foggy in order to protect all the other Foggies. Again, the wonderful moment from the last episode. I think essentially the blinding moment was, it's like he got life. What about old Foggy? He get life like that to me. Like that's still like the moment of the episode was so freaking good.
Yeah.
And so it feels to me that again at the aftermath of that and what kind of puts him on that rooftop and what kind of is like in his head this episode to some degree is he's protecting the Foggies out there. He wants to protect the Foggies, and Yusef is the interim Foggy.
That is an interesting comparison, and I can. It's not like a complete 1-to-1, but
No, I'd say it's like interim, just in the sense of like he said himself last episode. Foggy is like the most decent, nicest person that that he knew, and that he and Frank can never measure up to. And I think in that sense, Yusef fits the Foggy mold in terms of like a good moral person that doesn't deserve bad things happening to him, which again is like protecting the Foggies of the world, aka like a Yusef, a guy who's like doesn't deserve to be victimized.
Mm-hmm.
And that far off, you think, or
No, I think that's an interesting point, especially with what Yusuf says about. I think I mean not to jump too far into the episode, but I think the the conversation that Yusuf has with Matt as he's breaking through the safe, I think is very much indicative of like how pure-hearted Yusuf is as a character. And how he really is considerate of his like daughter's well-being and has that at the forefront of his mind for the most part.
All right. Also, we have a lot of fun Matt stuff here too. I love the way he play. I love the doddering blind man comedy, as Tiki kind of highlights in the comments area. Matt casually strolling back into the act of robbery. Not doing anything suspicious, whistle and all was definitely was the highlight of the season for him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like just the blind man comedy, and I love the banter that he has with Devil and how he earns the Irishman's respect. The whole thing, calling him solicitor the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And he gives him his backstory. He's basically so charming, but oh my god, he's like Charles Dick. He's like a Charles Dickens character.
A Charles Dickens character. Oh man,
Which is hilarious.
These hostage takers, these bank robbers were so Irish. It was awesome.
So I love that with that too. I love that Matt's using his backstory to save hostages. So that was a rival for me for my blinding moment. I really did love that, just that the comedy of that moment, and just the fact that he's also saving people with that.
Mm-hmm.
Just great.
Yeah, appreciated the little bit of legal commentary, which is accurate. That if any of the robbers would kill anyone, armed robbery would escalate to felony murder, and that's
yeah. Accurate. Oh yeah. Look at him, lawyer. It's great.
Yeah.
So at the end of in terms of like Matt's arc by the end of the episode, so he's made a friend, and he's at least again look between this and the next episode, which we're not going to talk about, just in the interim. He's able to go back on his promise, the promise they made to himself in light of Foggy's death, a little bit here. But he's feeling good at the end of this episode. But as we're going to see at the top of the next episode, the Catholic guilt will take hold, and then he's going to be. It's like one step forward. He's gonna be back into like I went back on my word there. I don't feel good about this, but right now. He's feeling pretty good. It's kind of a happy end for him here this episode. You got to do a little violence, got to save a lot of people, and he didn't put on the suit, so it's kind of a loophole.
Mm-hmm.
Not to the man on the cross, but everything else, it's coming up Millhouse from Murdock. Oh, by the way, one last thing I want to get in there. This is going to sound really weird, but. The MCU seems to really love Al Pacino movies.
I mean, who doesn't like Al Pacino movies?
Well, that's true, but I'm saying it's funny that this episode has kind of I kind of looked at this episode, I kind of see like kind of a combination of 3 Al Pacino movies besides the obvious go-to, which would be Godfather, which Luke Cage does all the time. Seriously, you look at Luke Cage seasons 1 and 2. I mean, they have a lot of reverence for Godfather Part 2, and the end payoff of season 2 of Luke Cage as well. Sorry, more. The payoff of Luke Cage season 2 is he basically is Michael Corleone the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
With the whole we have like the barbershop kind of nod to set it up.
Well, no, the ending shot is mirroring the ending shot of Godfather 1.
Well, no, I know that. What I'm saying is it's funny that you have it was like a 3-act structure with the Godfather references in Luke Cage. We have like the barbershop, which is like Al Pacino would get if your the Corleone gets a free haircut. Mm-hmm. We have Tiki and I have always made a meal out of the way Mike Coulter is Godfather Part 2. When they're in prison, and this is the whole thing of I forget if it was like Kravitz's daughter. I think it was somebody like Zoe Kravitz or somebody. Anyway, and then of course the ending, which you're right is exactly the end of. So at a point they were like foreshadowing the Michael Corleone thing kind of from the start, whether intentionally or no, it just kind of paid off really wonderfully there. So there's a lot of Pacino love in the end, in the Netflix MCU especially. But this episode, think about it. You have a Dog Day Afternoon, pretty clearly. You got you have that. You have And Justice for All, which no one ever talks about aside from the ending. By the way, really good movie. You've seen that one, right?
No.
Oh man, you're a lawyer, man. You gotta see that one.
I mean, most lawyer films and shows are not 100% legally accurate, so
I know this one. That's what I'm saying. This is like I don't know. There's a lot of authenticity in this one.
All right.
Okay. Anyway, even for fun, just even if it doesn't always have to follow like the book 100%. I mean, come on, it's a liberty. It's still kind of fun.
So long as it doesn't talk about geometry, it's good in your book.
Yes.
Man, you must not have been. Math was not a solid subject for you, was it?
No, no, math was not. It's not just here's it's not just geometry, but just math. You lose me with math. But anyway.
All right, I'm gonna hope for a superhero movie that the main character in the superhero is a mathematician by day, and he uses.
Why would you hope for that? Why do you seek to punish me with that? Why?
Look, if you have scientific superheroes, math is part of STEM, man. Math is very important. I know, as a lawyer, we have the joke of lawyers aren't good at math, but math's important. Math, you gotta
I
respect.
know math's important, but when you go on and on about it, it's like
If you use
anyway.
Daredevil characters in your math word problems, if you would have done well in that.
Well, we'll never know now.
Oh boy.
Okay, anyway. I mean, if trigonometry had devil horns, I don't know, maybe. Okay, point being, the other one, scent of a woman, because blind.
But
Yeah.
I feel like that's. I mean, I feel it's a bit of a reaches there, but because I mean another movie that's referenced to this is like Inside Man. Well, the whole like bank robbery situation of it all and like the mask, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think part of it is just if you're a superhero in a more predominantly crime fighting or crime drama piece, I mean, you can't help but like go to the classics and for crime dramas and whatnot. I mean, The Long Halloween is just directly ripping off The Godfather.
Well,
So
absolutely. Well, anyway, yeah, that's a look. I know, obviously, Dog Day Afternoon. It's the big takeaway. But I don't know. I'm just saying it's kind of funny connecting the Al Pacino thing is the fact that we have like iconic Al Pacino movie where you have a lawyer, you have a blind man, and you have a bank robbery. I'm just saying we kind of have those three elements somewhat represented in this episode. So just throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there. It's not saying it's intentional. Luke Cage was absolutely intentional, but aside from that, anyway.
I mean, Ben Affleck played Daredevil, and he also played, he probably played a lawyer and something else, and he played a bank robber in the town. So
Well,
it's
again,
all
he
connected.
played, yeah, he played Daredevil.
Yeah, yeah, it's all connected.
You're mocking me, aren't you?
I guess you have a good sense of sarcasm. You should be Daredevil.
Anyway.
Well, folks, I guess Dragon knew how to discern that one.
Where?
uh,
Anyway. 30 years, folks. 30 years. Okay, so let's talk about Detective Angie Kim.
mm-hmm.
Okay, go on, funny man. Talk about Detective Agent Kim.
Detective Angie Kim, outside of her, like her attempting to do a joke, I feel like she wasn't that great of a hostage negotiator.
Well, I mean, some hostages got released.
Yeah, but she wasn't like it would have been cool if it was like sort of like a two-person thing where like she was kind of convinced the hostage taker and Matt helped out. It was kind of like a symbiotic thing. It was really more like she just talked and then Devlin's like, "Oh, you'd be lucky to have anyone alive," and then Matt just had to like haul ass to like convince Devlin or be able to have the hostage be safe. And it's like, come on, kid. You could do a little bit more. You must have seen Inside Man or any movie with hostage negotiator. You got to establish a rapport. I feel like Cherry was the hostage negotiator. It would have been much easier. They would have gotten more hostage stuff.
Yeah.
Honestly, that man, if Brett Mahoney was part of the show, he would have been cool as the hostage negotiator.
Yeah, that would have been great. But again, it's probably gonna be we're gonna eventually have Mahoney in there.
Especially if Brett is aware about Matt being Daredevil in order that Matt's in the like bank. That would have been kind of a cool dynamic where both of them are working together to get like the hostage down or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, he would have faith in Matt's abilities for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So here, I don't know. With Angie came to the years, we set her up in episode 1.
Mhm.
And really paying her off here, and she does come back in, let's say, in our next episode. So I like that we're starting to flesh her out more. She's Cherry's partner again. We love Cherry again. We miss Mahoney, but we like Cherry again. Cherry is very much a Mahoney replacement, but yeah, at some point they're going to add Mahoney in. I'm sure we're going to have to figure out something for him to do. Anyway, so she's in charge of hostage negotiations, because all the Irish cops are busy on St. Patrick's Day doing, well, you guessed it, drinking like fish and Lake Erie.
That is anti-Irish propaganda, but probably true.
Yeah. Did you get a Yuri Watanabe vibe from her at all?
Why? Because they're both Asian cops?
Well, no, I meant because she seems pretty. I don't know. She seemed pretty competent. I don't know. I mean, you're right. Not great. I don't know.
You could have just went with any other cop, and it's like.
Well, I was going for the Spider-Man Insomniac vibe, but God forbid.
Strong Asian cop. That must be your Watanabe, or.
I'm regretting inviting you on for this.
Oh man.
Okay, but so you don't. Okay, I get the sense
I'm
you're not seeing any.
I'm glad you didn't call it that one DODC agent. It's like, oh, do you not like? Did you not get Ray Nadeem vibes from him? Oh boy.
Look, I'm just saying again. I think I said a vibe. I said just in general, like the idea of the competent cop that may or may not be kind of helping, or at least in turn helping helping our hero on the inside again, who is secretly the namesake title hero. I don't know.
Dragon, if there's any episode in this season or next season where there's like a black guy with shades and black leather, I hope you don't get Blade vibes from him. Okay. But yeah, I kind of see where you're coming from to a certain extent.
I don't believe you for a second. Anyway, okay, so point being,
the vibes of agreeing with you.
Okay, anyway, so we have a smart, honest cop. Devlin may or not be an ex-cop. What do you think? You think Devlin, because he knew a lot of the police procedure. I mean, what do you think?
I mean, I assume he's just as a career criminal.
Just well prepared.
I feel like career criminals can have some, especially if they have someone that's in this. Either they have someone in the police department that can give them the heads up, or basically like an understanding how the police department works, or they've just been at it long enough that they know how cops operate. Either or, makes sense. Definitely.
Okay. Let's see. I love her struggling to tell the joke, so it ends up being the Irish Penguin joke.
That was I appreciate there's being a bit of a pause because you don't know Devlin really appreciated the joke, and he just starts laughing, and it's like, oh, that was a good moment of levity.
Oh yeah. Okay, so let's Rohith's just completely discounting my Watanabe kind of vibes there. Let's just move on to Yusuf Khan.
Well, are we not going to speculate that Kim will become a vigilante of her own?
Not anymore. I mean, you just kind of threw all that out. So it's I mean, I think she was going to change her tune on vigilantes, but that's all I was suggesting. But you kind of quash that. So we're just going to talk about Yusuf now.
Oh man. I appreciate.
Dude, folks, this is why people hate lawyers. This guy right here. That's why.
I feel like Tiki would have made the same comment as well.
No, I don't think he would have.
All right, but I regards to Yusuf Khan, I appreciated him trying to just like yap his way from not being able to open the safe. Him talking about the history of it. It's like, oh man, Yusuf is definitely the kind of guy that could just talk about the history of anything just to buy some time or just to like fill the time.
No, absolutely. So he's again we're kind of getting to my blinding moment a little bit on that one. But let's just say I did love the tension there. I love that he's this basically. So again, as we've established, loving father of a superhero. Matt, Matt doesn't know it, but Kamala's kind of doing it right. In an interesting way, like Kamala's doing it right. She has the balance of family and vigilantism, but clearly, it's very different, circumstance in terms of she's been on I can't say Shield anymore. She's on Sword's radar, I guess, and she's very different situation where she's not being monitored as closely, but who knows at this point? I guess what I'm getting at is I love that he's Yusuf's come a long way. We put him into kind of the action situation, but without Miss Marvel at all in his corner to help him out or really kind of guide him through this, like we kind of saw in the Marvels. Like during the action scenes, he was just kind of reluctantly thrown into there. So it's really cool seeing him in kind of this, kind of in the out. Well, I want to say the Al Pal position, but let's just it doesn't really. It's not really those credits don't really transfer. What I mean? It's kind of vaguely a Die Hard kind of a thing. Vaguely,
he's in sort of an action movie situation, but he doesn't have to be the action hero themselves.
Yeah. So again, he's very lovable. Again, the audience / myself, I think we're pleading for him not to get hurt during all this because we know he's probably not going to die. But but then again, with this show, that's the thing. With this show, it's like we almost have a death every episode. Almost. Think about it. Episode 1, Foggy. Episode 2, we killed the undercover cop. Well, the dirty cop, but probably potentially the plainclothes cop. 3, we White Tiger. Let's see. Trying to remember if I could have sworn we killed someone in 4, but all right. Well, yeah, Muse killed somebody. Muse killing his victims in 4. We got a body count stacking up here, so thankfully, thankfully no bodies dropping this one. I was still I didn't want any harm to. I didn't want Yusuf to get shot or anything. So it was.
Yeah, hopefully Yusuf Khan never has to interact with Kingpin. Especially post episode 6. My goodness.
Oh yeah. Doesn't want to cross him. So it's we kind of can dance around here. It's really sweet to see him and Matt become friends, and it's I don't know. It's just you're right. There's a lot of there's a protective thing about Yusuf, and I do think he kind of embodies it's just kind of the New Yorker, or basically what Matt's fighting to protect and why kind of vigilantism needs to come back in his life so he can make sure these guys don't get shot or become victims of crime.
I mean, it's like Yusuf Khan is really reminds me to a certain extent of people like Miss Cardenas from season 1. That's the whole point for Daredevil is that they fight for the little guy or the little gal or just the little person in general. And Daredevil, I think the fact that it was specifically Matt that was able to not only protect this person but have a sense of rapport. It's kind of a neat, deviation from the typical trend for any sort of street level vigilante or anti-hero story. There's always this amount of drama or tension and struggle with the character opening themselves up to other people. And I appreciate for what Matt has gone through is that he's able to still have some level of emotional, openness and ability to connect with people. And isn't sort of, drawn or cut off from the world as one would think, especially going through the level of tragedy he's gone through, not just in this, not just in the beginning of the season, but even the past 3 seasons of Netflix Daredevil.
Oh yeah, it's the fun marriage of the kind of a classic, kind of Daredevil kind of supporting character vibe. But again, in the advent of the MCU, where we can actually have crossovers with other Marvel characters, we're not shooting for the moon yet, which is just kind of I think we're baby stepping it to season 2. We could actually afford to get everybody.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel watered down or neutered because, I feel like this episode had a lot of F-bombs, and it was mature, but it wasn't dour or grim or anything. It was a relatively, maybe not action heavy, but moderate level of action crime, episode. that still had characters, that had personality, that had hopes and aspirations, and it was like, oh, this is an episode that you can show to people that maybe aren't necessarily into the whole hard hitting crime, grim and gritty element of Daredevil. Because certain episodes of Netflix Daredevil, as much as I enjoy most, if not all of them, to one degree or another, there is a level of brutality and violence and just dreariness to certain episodes that it can be hard on the average person. So I think this is kind of like a nice episode that is able to have a good amount of edge and seriousness, but still is like fun, or as fun as you can have in Daredevil. And I think, like I said, the Mark Waid run is probably a good template of this. And I think in another world, if without the overhaul, if this show had time to breathe, this could have been a very like maybe not hard PG-13, but like a rung below it. And it may not be the dark and dreariness of the original Daredevil, but I think it would certainly fulfill the ethos of the character, even if it isn't as mature and adult as the prior show is.
Well, I'll remind you, the original Daredevil did not have F-bombs.
Wait, what?
I'll remind you, the original Daredevil show didn't really have F-bombs.
No, I think it may have gone 1 or 2 in season 3, but yeah, it isn't.
That's what I'm saying. But I see, if so, it's very it's like kind of like a faint under the breath F-bomb. It's not really like there's not like a major F-bomb. Like they're not dropping it casually. It's not like really pronounced. Like here's the thing. Like technically, Luke Cage, I want to say was the first Marvel show that have F-bombs because it's like worked into the rap music, or like the music that was in certain scenes, like put the subtitles on, or it'd be like under someone's breath during like an act. I think when we have like the shootout, there's like the F-bomb might have been dropped. That's the
Yeah, I think if you take the super elements out of Luke Cage is probably more of a mature adult drama. Not to say all the Netflix Marvel shows from one case or another are mature adult dramas, but it's certainly like, I think the level of language is like, oh, this would have been something that would have been on, it may have been on HBO, but like Showtime or even Starz to a certain extent. Yeah, with Daredevil, the maturity is in its themes and violence.
Yeah.
But I think this episode is kind of interesting to see kind of like a few F-bombs. Like, oh, there's like some, it's not too overdoing it. I mean, let's be real. Like no Marvel thing, even Netflix or whatever, could ever be on the level of like a Scorsese like gangster movie, or even Wolf of Wall Street level obscenity. But it doesn't like positively or negatively influence. It's just kind of there. It's kind of just observe and know.
Yeah. All right. I think it's time to get into our blinding moment of awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Blind Matt Murdock.
Hold on.
I'm blind Matt Murdock.
There we go.
Oh man, I love that clip existing.
Okay. So, I'm going to start with mine because mine chronologically comes first here. So, I love, yeah. Well, Tiki like plays it like 3 times, so I think doing it twice is acceptable. Okay. So anyway, the opening of the safe. So Yusef, he's been told to stall. I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm rooting for Matt. Just this race of like he's taking out the guy in the red mask. I'm hoping. Oh God, I hope he's good. So I love that Matt has a plan during all this. Like he knows exactly what to do in the situation where he feigns they having to use the bathroom so he can be taken away, and he can basically be on the way of kind of helping Yusef out. Can probably using his essentially his echolocation abilities. He can probably get him his senses. He can. You can kind of map out the floor plan of the building. He probably knows where the vault is. So it probably works in his favor on that front. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I love that he's. So basically, they have got the red mask. He takes him out. Then he basically saves Yusef from the guy in the blue mask. And it's just a great last minute save too, where some bad's gonna have the Yusef because the blue mask has kind of figured out. Oh, you don't have the key, do you? Mm-hmm. You don't have any idea how to open this. This is a realistic bank thing, by the way. the idea that Yusef is an assistant manager now. The impression that I get now, I don't know this for certain here, but Yusef, he's filling in. The other guy hasn't. The other guy had emergency. So the manager had an emergency and he was delayed. Now I wonder if perhaps that was also if Mr. Aldrich was the assistant manager or the manager himself. I believe Aldrich is the manager, but regardless, there's a chance that his home branch might be actually closer to Jersey City, and he happened to be just it moved some into one of the branches that's more in New York.
I feel like it's more likely that Yusuf Khan just commutes to this branch because it's like, I mean, it's not too far of a commute, but.
Well, I was thinking maybe that's what I'm saying. Like, people do branch hop a lot, where they kind of send people like a floating teller or something. I'm not saying he's a teller, but like a floating kind of
bank official, or
yeah, like I'm saying, if they're short staffed, which they clearly seem to be.
Well, Mr. Aldridge maybe had a few two drinks at a St. Patty's Day.
That exactly. That's what I'm saying. They're calling in sick because they spent, they've either taken off or they're doing some pre-gaming.
So what you're saying is that because of some alleged drunkenness, the day was saved.
I guess so.
As Homer Simpson said in The Simpsons, alcohol is both the problem, is both the source and solution to life's problems.
Well spoken, barkeep. Well spoken. Anyway, so the point being, sir, what I'm getting at here is I just love the classic Daredevil charm of this bit here. After the last minute save, it's this kind of the cause of and solution to all life's problems. Anyway, so I love the idea here that Matt knows that they can't come back empty-handed. So a classic Daredevil charm in this moment of Matt using his abilities to open the bank vault as Yusef is like astonished by him being able to do this. And I just love it. It shows how clever Matt is on the fly with this plan before the robbery and how this is part of it. And I love the kind of coupled with this. I love that when he's inside the vault, like the bonding with him and Yusef here, where they're kind of talking about life and everything. Matt's trying to keep Yusef calm because obviously he's dropping the keys left and right here. And I love that this is a situation where they're kind of bonded by limitations here. Obviously, Yusef's in over his head. He's very nervous. Matt's very calm under pressure, but despite his abilities, is blind. And we've kind of covered this before. We talked about this a little before. Where again, a bomb is kind of Daredevil's weakness. A bomb is something really tricky. Now, this is obviously not a bomb, but it is a similar problem where, in a time-sensitive situation, even if he has a good kind of a layout of the room, which clearly he does, it'll take him forever to kind of feel around and just kind of figure out okay, this is the 100 section. There's the 40. You need to get to the 400 section, and I guess he could ask him to point the direction. Still, there's a lot of safe deposit boxes there, so he's going to need some help.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. I like that it's kind of Matt in a position where he needs Yosef.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, so the point being, I just thought it was kind of it felt like a classic Daredevil moment. It's just really cool, and obviously it also calls back the whole he's a really good lawyer.
Oh, absolutely.
It's great. Okay, what do you have, Rohith?
Mind-blinding moment is after the robbery is foiled, and Devlin's about to make out scot-free. Our good old boy Matt Murdock puts on the red mask and just lays it on him with the level of brutality. And it is finished off with a chef's kiss, a kick to the knee, and the level of brutality in the sound and the visual. Matt Murdock is a man who defends the innocent, but he certainly knows how to punish the wicked. And my goodness, does he know how to punish well. If Frank saw that, he'd be like, good on you, Red. Let it out.
Well, Fisk would say, let the devil out.
Mr. Murdock.
Well, you remember that from season 3, don't you?
Yes.
The whole, let the devil out.
Mm-hmm. It is in your nature to hurt people.
Okay. Anyway, well, Rohit brushes up on his D'Onofrio.
Hey, my D'Onofrio is not that bad.
It's not great.
Oh, like yours is any better.
I think it's better than yours, at least.
All right. If there's anyone who's watching this live or after the fact, say yes to Rohit, no to Dragon.
Say 50-50. Look, I'm not saying mine's great. I'm just saying it's better than his.
I think I could say Vanessa. Yeah, it's a little I'll need to work on that. I'll workshop that.
I'll spend more than $6 on postage.
Well, I'm glad Jacob is an honest.
To be fair, Jacob has a very high opinion of his own voice acting capabilities. So, so I don't know if that's the best judge, but you know. He does a fantastic Gromit impression. He has a flaw. He's the best Gromit impression I've ever heard, though. I will give him that. No, seriously, Rohit, you haven't heard how great his Gromit impression is. It's flawless. It is a sight to behold. It's like it's so good you could say he actually voices him in the movies.
Oh man, I bet he does a great Snake Eyes impression as well.
Anyway, that's true. Okay. Anyway, yes. So brutality and violence. It's great. So let's move on to our final segment, the Braille Trail. So a few fun little Easter eggs and just kind of things to keep note of. So of course, obvious one, Yusuf Khan was in this episode. You know, this is probably him post the Marvels movie. Miss Marvel's dad. Mm-hmm. It's surprised to see him at a bank. Here's the thing: I knew we were going to see him at some point this season, but I did not picture that was like a bank vault they were walking into. I thought it was like an apartment door. So I don't know. I think the presumption, based on the editing of the trailer for Born Again, I think a lot of people thought like when Matt showed up and like beat up those cops in episode 2.
That was connected to. Yeah, I see what you mean.
That was like the editing presumption, but that's the way it was edited in the trailer. Like the whole, I'm a really good lawyer. He's beating people up in a small apartment.
Imagine if he did get to kill those cops and he said that to Yusuf as he's walking out.
Yeah. Rohit, you've done that before. Rohit, you've done that before, haven't you?
Oh man,
you've beaten the tar out of corrupt cops, and you people looked in horror, and you said, "Well, it's because I'm a really good lawyer."
I will say that I would not commit such an allegation, and whoever's listening to this will understand and can discern, keyword discern, this context of it being a joke, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. But yeah. Another thing on the Braille trail of it all. So when Matt is listening to the heartbeats of all the hostages, I didn't notice this upon initial watch, but when I was watching the breakdown of this episode by New Rockstars, they made the point that everyone's heartbeats are elevated, but Celine, the woman who is later found out to be in on the heist, her heartbeat was steady. Which that is a cool detail to have there. And I think if upon rewatch, if people were to discern that detail, the payoff then becomes even more apparent with her being in on the heist.
Oh yeah. It's really cool. Mm-hmm. We referenced Sister Maggie from season 3. We kind of referenced the whole reconnecting with the mother when he's kind of telling when he and Yusuf are bonding in the vault. Mm-hmm. Let's see. So Funkos in the MCU.
So who do you think is making these Funkos of Miss Marvel?
Well, remember this was in this episode we say that was a custom Funko. So this is the idea they had mass-produced Miss Marvel. Right. But in general, though, Funkos probably exist in again, it's like the Captain America comics we saw. Like again, they have in-universe marketing for the MCU characters, and we saw like action figures and stuff, and like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So like they are being made and manufactured. So it would stand the reason Funkos probably just more depend on like
that kind of money, because man, I would feel like there's some royalties being missed.
Well, that's the thing too, where that's something I love to see man deal with.
You get my likeness. I am owed X amount of money or percentage of profits.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing about like the royalties thing, like Hawkeye going to imagine Hawkeye showing up and it's like, you know what, I'm not getting my family could use this money.
I bet the way that those deals work out, because there's probably so many people involved, not just the lawyers, but also like, for example, not the Hamilton-esque play, Rogers the
Yeah,
musical.
Rogers the musical.
Yeah, because it's probably like the people who made the musical, the company owns the rights to the music, and then there's like probably like, do the heroes own their own trademarks, or is it through the government or whatever? I think by the end of it, you know how like for musicians, like actor or even actors, like any creative that like makes a profit on a piece of art, like after paying management, taxes, all that, they like what they have after all that is just so small as a fractionally as compared to what they got paid initially. I bet that's the same thing for a lot of these heroes that after going through many hands and taxes, like it's probably not enough money.
Yeah. But yeah, so we have like the bedazzled custom variant pop. So this is an existing Funko Pop, which they basically probably customized or used a variant version of it for, which you know they're actually going to make at some point. They're probably going to re-release it as like the exact one from Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. We call back the really good lawyer line, which again reminds you, it's a shame that Matt forgot all about that scene. When you look at this, thanks to the end of Far From Home, of No Way Home, the end of No Way Home.
Yeah, I imagine that's a line that has been said, or he says to other people. But
well, yeah, I'm just saying this. It's kind of sad that I'm saying he's forgotten that he's actually interacted with Spider-Man.
maybe it's a line that Foggy said to him, and he was just saying that line to Peter, and that's how he's able to. That's probably the source of that line.
Maybe.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. So Kamala and her friends are in La La Land. They're in L.A. So this a lot. I think the direct thing people are thinking of is Young Avengers.
Or more specifically, Champions.
I know that's what I was getting at. So a lot of people are thinking Young Avengers because we saw Kamala. She's kind of doing some recruiting. I think basically get the Avengers namesake in there. You're right. It's sounds like it's more accurate to Champions, but I'm just saying for branding purposes, there's probably gonna be Young Avengers. But then
no, for branding purposes, it's going to be Champions.
Wait, really?
Yes.
You sound kind of sure about that.
Yes, I'm sure it's going to be a Champions TV show on Disney.
Oh. Okay. Well, there you go.
Yes.
Was that announced?
It's been strongly like mentioned by Scoopers, and there's been a writer that's been hired for the show. It's unclear if said writer is just one of the writers for the show or going to be the head writer of the show. And it's supposed to be filming next year.
Well, at some point they got to do Young Avengers, right?
Well, I think the point is that Young Avengers, it's going to be Young Avengers and everything but a name.
Really? So they're not. Here's the thing. I bring it up because, the big thing. We have like the setup for another T'Challa. At the end of Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. And the theory is again, so if we don't do Young Avengers with our literal Young Avengers, it would be in the future we'd have the next lineup of Avengers, and it might be like T'Challa 2.0 and whoever.
For all intents and purposes, like the lineup for that champion show is Miss Marvel, Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, Cassie, Ironheart, Speed, Wiccan, and I think America Chavez.
Ah, yes. It's a pretty solid lineup.
And these are all like the exception of Ironheart and Miss Marvel, who are originally Champions members. Most of the team are Young Avengers members. So it's going to be Young Avengers and everything but a name, and the name will be just Champions.
I'm sure that's going to go over. I'm sure that's going to go over really well, by the way. Just like, we're not just going to call them Young Avengers. Clearly the Young Avengers outnumber them.
I mean, look, if Marvel Netflix can have a show called The Defenders and it has none of the original Defenders members on it, I think we can let it go.
Yeah, but in the comics, though, they reflected that, though.
No. They changed it to reflect the to do synergy with the.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean.
People
So at
complain
least
about this, like comics doing synergy with MCU, and it's like, I'm sorry, but like the Defenders was originally
I'm
Hulk.
saying at least
Thor.
Bendis was involved in that, though.
Why? What is a certain comic creator getting involved and doing like a new version of a team that was not? There's no relation between what the old team was and what the new team was.
No. I'm just saying in terms of synergy. Like, okay, look, if we're pulling the Netflix Defenders into into the comics again, but basically redoing the. It's a different Defenders team, but we're at least putting the people that built those characters on the Defenders.
So the comics will do the same for the MCU champions. They'll take those characters who are mostly young Avengers and just become the champions.
Yeah.
But to your point about,
to be fair, everyone's really tried to get like the classic Defenders there. We always have like these stumbling blocks. Where if you think about it, Thor Ragnarok, a lot of people were theorizing we were going to get our kind of Defenders there, but the re-event with the Revengers. But then it kind of fell through because we had Doctor Strange in that movie, and we had well, that's what I'm saying. It was just never going to come to pass because we don't have Namor. I mean, people was aching for the classic Defenders, but it was just never in the cards.
well, I mean, considering Namor is in Avengers Doomsday, there's and wherever that takes the character post Secret War.
I'm saying like now. I'm just saying then
Yeah.
like by the era of Netflix. Now we actually might have a Silver Surfer or Silver Surfers or however that's going to shake out and anger people.
But I mean, it could be that. I think to apply Occam's razor, it could be that Kamala is visiting Bruno and his friends because he's going to a program in Caltech, which is based in Pasadena, which is east of LA. So that could also be the case. Maybe also Kamala has made friends that are pen pals or whatever through being Avengers fans and she's going on a trip to visit them in the LA area.
Well, I mean, also it could just be her visiting, Carol.
Why would Carol be in LA?
Oh wait, yeah, you're right. Sorry
Mixing up the city LA with the state of Louisiana, which has the same initials as LA, but it isn't.
No, right. No. Here's the thing. I forgot. Honestly, I kind of forgot where we left. We left Carol in Louisiana at the house. So yeah, you're right.
If anything, like it's kind of a missed opportunity for Sam to now come back to Louisiana and maybe come across Carol there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's neither here nor there.
Did you ever see the? Did you ever see like the cruise thing they did? The Marvel cruise thing with Ant-Man.
I've seen snippets of it. Yeah,
because they actually had Sam interact with they had like Sam Wilson, Captain America, along with Miss Marvel and Ant-Man. They're all
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. The red ski mask again. The Daredevil color theory. We got a red mask. It's also a foreshadow to the vigilantism. So we're kind of building some stuff there.
And the green ski mask. I think people made the joke that like, oh, this is comic accurate Sin Eater.
No,
people made that joke. I'm not saying it's a true thing. I'm just saying that's like a little fun joke.
Oh no, right. Well, I would say like okay, we'll put the Irish guy in the green mask. That's kind of on St. Patrick's Day. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
The lead Irish guy's wearing the green mask. It's cute.
You got to rep his nation.
Well, yeah. He's either there to hold some Guinness in his hand, but yeah. So, let's see. So Matt Murdock and McDuffie, they're having some money problems potentially. We're gonna pick back up on down the line. I love that we set up the use of. I'm sorry, I can't really do anything to help you. Maybe we can brainstorm some solutions.
Well, here's kind of a fun thing: is that Charlie Cox is a British man playing an Irish American, doing an Irish accent. And fun fact: before Daredevil,
he was on Boardwalk Empire.
He played an Irish character. So it all comes full circle.
Yeah. Okay, so Daredevil. I sent you this. So Daredevil. We dipped into St. Patrick's Day very lightly before in the Daredevil show.
Mm-hmm.
In season 2, I think it was season 2, episode 10, we saw like the Karen in her apartment. She has this little photo of her, Matt, and Foggy. It's adorable. Like on St. Patrick's Day, they're wearing green and everything. It's precious, and actually it's come back. And when they're doing the whole Save Daredevil campaign, it was like for the big Nelson Murdock and Page thing. They threw that image up a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
it's also, again, another kind of season 2 thing. It's kind of Daredevil versus the Irish,
Yep.
throwing that in there. Also, again, Yusuf having the sweet tooth. He got those snack cakes in Miss Marvel, and now he has like the candy.
The butterscotch.
Yep, butterscotch. Which butterscotch is good, by the way, and also bank candy.
I'm not really a butterscotch guy, but I mean at best I can go maybe Butterfingers, but that's the extent of my.
It's not candy, but I like the butterscotch crimpet. How do you feel about the butterscotch crimpet?
I don't think I've ever tried it.
Oh, it's very good. Yeah, sponge cake and butterscotch.
That's too rich for my blood. To quote Ted Lasso, that's too rich for my blood.
All right. So, well, I think that anything else you can think of for Braille Trail, or
no, I think this is a pretty straightforward episode of TV that comes in, comes out, and you just have sort of a fun dynamic with Yusuf and Matt. And I kind of wish more shows are able to go to like 10 to 15 episodes, because man, you could have sort of an episode or two where Daredevil can just interact with like a random MCU character and just have sort of fun rapport, and really get to have Daredevil really be part of the MCU to like a major degree.
It would be really fun, and if Born goes on long enough, and we have post, I guess, he's given all the cast announcement, I guess post Secret Wars, we would have we'd be able to have with Fantastic Four hire Daredevil, hire Matt Murdock, so we have like the Thing across from the Thing across from Matt Murdock needing help.
Yeah, or maybe Daredevil representing a mutant in court.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah,
probably not Deadpool though. That'd be hilarious, but probably not Deadpool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I want to thank the folks for tuning in, and by the folks I mean Jacob and Tiki.
Everyone else will be here in spirit.
Yep. Okay, let's see. I kind of want to thank Rohith, but he kind of gave me the business more than I would have liked, so I'm kind of wavering on that right now.
What's the cure to a black eye? Fast hands.
Okay. All right, that's all for now. Until the next daring installment of Discerning Daredevil. Born Again.
I fucked a penguin.